And well, that's it that we had for you in this edition of KTN Business. I hand you back now to Wilson Buru.
Well, thank you very much, Joy, and welcome back. Great to see you once again. How does it feel to be back? How does it feel to be on air again?
It feels fantastic, and I'm well rested, I think, especially after adding a dual citizen to the population of Kenya.
And welcome to the world to the new citizen. Congratulations.
Thank you
very much. All right, let's now go to Nancy, who is sitting with the Kenyan ambassador to the United Nations. Over to you, Nancy.
All right, thank you very much, Wilson. And yes, welcome back, Joy. It's really great to have you back. And since you said you're well rested, we'll remember to give you most of the work. Now, I am sitting with the Kenyan ambassador to, Kenya's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations here in Nairobi, and that's Ambassador Martin Kimani. Thank you very much for joining this evening for a very important conversation as we continue to talk about GRAFT. Now, tomorrow, those 175 names in those cases will be revealed. And as we run up to that, the question that many Kenyans are asking is the government really serious about walking the talk this time? Because people have stepped aside, but is that only for them to come back later? In your assessment, and I remember you calling the President's State of the Nation address historic, and you said this was unprecedented. Do you think we're equally going to see an unprecedented move towards curbing corruption in this country?
Well, Nancy, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I think the President was crystal clear in what he wanted to do. Which was one, to stand by his oath of office and to the promises he has made to the Kenyan people in terms of facing corruption and also expressing the frustration that he has together with Kenyans that this vice is so pervasive and that it robs us of our promise and our work. And so I think he made a number of statements that should all be taken together. One was the issue of this particular report, tabling it to Parliament and asking for all officers and all individuals who are named in the report to stand aside while investigations are completed. But secondly, also to demand that the machinery that we depend on to fight corruption is looked at and made far more effective than it has been, because he noted that there has been persistent inability of the machinery that is supposed to deliver anti-corruption to Kenyans. And so he asked the Attorney General and other officers to relook at this machinery and make it more robust. So one has to look at it in the full breadth. And it's not merely about the list, but it's actually about the full breadth of actions. And I think the most crucial call he made was to say that it's not just a question of these particular institutions or the presidency, that this is a national matter, and calling on all Kenyans to hold hands and link up now to fight corruption together.
Right, but be that as it may, it still is primarily talk. And people are concerned about whether this will actually bear fruit and manifest into something real being done about corruption. And related to that, now you've written a few papers and you've talked about, when you're dealing with peace, there are punitive measures and there are restorative measures. And perhaps we can apply the same principle here in the sense that we're taking some punitive measures, but how do we curb corruption right from the highest officers to the lowest officers? Because it's endemic. We have corruption in the police force, we have literally every sector you can think of. So how do we get the big fish, the small fish? How do we actually weed out corruption from the very core of the society? Is it enough to just punish people?
I think, Nancy, that's an excellent question. If I was to quote the President, I think he said we should remember the beauty of service. And he called us to love of country, to love of community, to commitment, to duty. And I think corruption, what the President was really telling us is that this vice is contributed to by millions of us. The most responsible and the most serious are the most senior of us, the people who serve in positions of responsibility, who choose to use those positions to abuse the trust of Kenyans. However, all of us have a responsibility. So if one were to take this idea of restorative as opposed to punitive in terms of corruption, one would say then it is a question of everyone remembering the call of duty and beginning to embrace the actual responsibilities that we've been given as officials in government and really as Kenyans.
Right.
And so that actually is what will eventually, I think, over time, defeat corruption,
Right.
bringing back honor to public service and bringing back shame to our national life where people step off
Yes.
the right path.
Shame is actually a very useful emotion.
Yeah.
Now, as a diplomat, you can speak to this. What has this latest push done for Kenya's image on an international scale? I mean, we've heard now that President Obama is going to be visiting in July. Does that point towards perhaps a warming up of relations? Or how is this whole thing affecting the way Kenya is viewed?
Well, as a diplomat, I'm very excited that President Obama is going to be here, and I'm sure President Uhuru is similarly pleased that he's going to be here. I think President Obama's visit and the bilateral visit that he will have with President Uhuru is an indication of how important the relationship with Kenya is and the sorts of solid steps that we're taking together.
Do you think it's an endorsement of his government?
Well, I don't think it's a positive gesture, but to say it's an endorsement is to suggest that if he didn't come, somehow it would be lack of an endorsement. But I think if you look at the way the United States and Kenya are working together in terms of security, you will see that we have very close links that are getting stronger. If you look at the way we share values, we share democratic values, and to a large extent, Kenya is not a copy of the United States, but the very values that have made America famous are the values that we reflect in this region, and they're not very common. So I think this is the United States showing how much it prizes the relationship, wanting to solidify the relationship and take it to a different level. And I think it tells the whole world that Kenya is a country that is increasingly relevant to all global actors, and is a country that increasingly is costly to be on the wrong side of. And that's what I read in this.
So a force to reckon with.
Well, not a force to reckon with in terms of a negative force to reckon with, but a force for democratic values,
Right.
a force against global terrorism. And Kenya has been ready to partner strongly with the United States ever since President Uhuru came to office.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. That was Ambassador Martin Kimani. He is Kenya's Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the United Nations here in Nairobi. You're watching KTN Prime. We've got the sports news coming up in just a bit.